On yesterday's mailbag episode, we talked about have the expectations changed for the Chicago Bulls. But on today's episode, I want to talk about who has the highest expectations on them coming into the 2024-25 season. We're talking about all that, plus a little bit about Lonzo Ball and who's the players that are going to be benefiting the most from Lonzo being on the court. And has the goal for the Chicago Bulls really changed much this season? We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off talking about this. Who has the biggest expectations on them coming into this season, right? You can look at it and say, well, Zach LaVine, especially with all the talk around him, has tremendous expectations on him to kind of prove people wrong that he is a player that contributes to winning, that he's a player that can stay healthy, that he's a player that he can buy into what this team is trying to do. And I think it's Zach LaVine that is really bought into the Chicago Bulls, right? Is really bought into playing a role for this team. Is going to be a Zach LaVine that looks like very different. But he's not the player that I think have the most expectations on him, right? You're looking at players like Kobe and Ayo as well, who had their career best years last year, career best years. And, that's not even hyperbole. There's no way you can really take away from that. Kobe White, who was the most improved player of the year last year. I don't care what the award or anything had to say. Kobe White had a tremendous season last year. And not only did he increase in his output statistically, he also increased in his role. He increased in his standing in the team. He increased in his importance to the team. Such a big part of that Chicago Bulls team winning, right? Ayo Dosunmu, tremendous season last year, both defensively and offensively. The Bulls asked him to play multiple positions, and he did that, playing more three last year than what he has in any other part of his career after playing more one at the point guard position the 2 years prior. Ayo Dosunmu had a tremendous year. And while there always are going to be those questions after having 1 year, right? And especially when it's not really a player steadily progressing, like Kobe White actually went down, right? As far as like from his second year to his third year, as far as numbers, his roles changed a lot. But then he had 2 years of going down and then came shooting back up, right? And then you look at Ayo Dosunmu, much like with Ayo, like Ayo's first and second seasons were pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. And then that third year was such a different player in Ayo Dosunmu. And so far through preseason, he looks like a different player as well, right? And he's going to have a tremendous amount of responsibility on the Chicago Bulls team defensively, coming off the bench in the second unit, right? Playing, again, multiple positions to kind of complement and fit in, depending on what the rotations are. A big part of that. Make no mistake about it, the expectations for Kobe and Ayo are extremely high, especially from Bulls fans. I don't know about, national media-wise. Like, I think Zach has probably the more expectations national media-wise. And then, of course, you have players like Patrick Williams, who it's hard to really have any type of expectations for P. Will, to just be honest with you. And maybe that's just the place that I've reached, right? And I can't crap on anybody for having huge expectations for P. Will. When you look at what's changed on this team, how his role has maybe increased, his place has maybe increased, things like that. Patrick Williams should have his own expectations. I just don't personally have super high expectations for P. Will. I just don't. Again, not to say that I don't think he can't have a great season. I think that is in Patrick Williams. I think the last two preseason games kind of gave more hope to the fact of the people holding out hope that P. Will is going to have this tremendous leap. But at this point, I've just reached the place of really just accepting P. Will for what he brings. He's a high percentage three-point shooter, not really high volume, but a high percentage three-point shooter. He's a solid defender. He's going to make some wild plays, over the season to really surprise you. But ultimately, I'm over the fact of having high expectations for P. Will. I just don't have very high expectations. So take that for what you will. And then of course you got players like Vooch, which I think collectively people don't really expect a lot from Vooch. You got the rookie Modest Bucilis, who I like to be more realistic, right? And I've seen the conversations. Hell, I've dropped a video with the title, "Can Modest Bucilis be in Rookie of the Year conversation?" And I think ultimately just comes down to Modest isn't going to start. And if Modest may have a very short lease on this team as well in games where he maybe defensively doesn't bring it, or he gets cooked or has a really bad matchup, And I don't necessarily think that should be the case. I think that Modest is a player that you want to take advantage of the mentality that Modest Bucilis has. And he's a player that is very proud. And so if he does have any games where defensively maybe doesn't look good for him at all, I think it's kind of best for his growth and development. But I think when you have players like a Torrey Craig, you have players like THT, kind of these veteran players that you at least kind of know their floor, and it's easier to build around that, especially if you're in a close game that you're trying to compete in. I still think Modest is going to be ahead, of a guy like THT in the rotation. It's just I think Modest as well is going to have that short lease in certain games, in certain scenarios. So, and rookies, it's kind of hard. I don't really have super high expectations for rookies. Not to say that Modest Bucilis isn't going to have a great season, but I think it'd be remiss for me to say, oh, well, he has the highest expectations. No, you're not going to put all that on a rookie for a team that still has veterans around him and still has players that have been in the league 4 or 5 years, right, that are still young. So, again, don't really have the high expectations for Modest Bucilis, but I do think Modest is going to have a great season. I'm just not ready in this rookie year to just be like, oh, well, he has to average this, he has to do this. No, Modest Bucilis goes out there and be him. Play well, play your heads up, improve month to month, and that's what I really want to see from Modest, right? Then you have players like Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips. Dalen, who's coming into his 4th year now in the league, right, or is it 3rd year? It's the 3rd year for Dalen Terry. I don't know why I'm putting the extra year on Dalen Terry. He's coming into his 3rd year in the NBA. And so this is a player, though, that you want to start seeing something for Dalen, right? You want to start seeing some type of proof that he can stay in the rotation and what he brings contributes to winning. And no, I'm not a guy, just an offensive basketball talker. I know that offense is a big and huge part of it. I understand that. You cannot take away from that. Offense means a lot, especially for a team in the Chicago Bulls that right now they're going to try to be great offensively, right? Moving the quick plays and trying to be middle of the pack defensively. But I still think Dalen and what he can bring. There's some expectations around Dalen. He does need to step up. He needs to show that ability to be a Swiss Army knife, get in the pass lanes, rebound well, pass well in transition, right? And still, you want him to shoot a better percentage, but his offense isn't necessarily the biggest thing you're looking at from Dalen. Now, Julian's a different story. I do have a lot of expectations for Julian Phillips. I think that when you pair the fact that Julian started passing up Torrey Craig last year in the rotation, when you look at the defensive and offensive versatility, as well as stylistically, how the Bulls and the up-tempo pace that they're trying to play, it benefits Julian Phillips in a huge way. Being able to have a guard out there with him at all times of the ilk of either Lonzo Ball with his creation, right, and what he does passing-wise in the basketball IQ. He's either going to be out there with Josh Giddey as well, who has a basketball IQ as well and create open shots, and Kobe White, who still is more of a scoring guard first. But let's be clear here. Kobe still creates open looks and can pass extremely well. And so having some of those guys out there with him at all times, as far as at that point guard position, I think it's going to be really important, even when Io's out there. And what Io did in transition passing-wise for the Chicago Bulls last year, all going to be really important things there. And I think Julian Phillips is the player that right now, if you look at who could make the largest leap from where they were last season, from numbers-wise, I think Julian Phillips is the guy to bet on there, right? I think that Io can make a really huge leap as far as role, defense, importance. But I don't know if I expect Io to go from averaging, 16 points per game as a scorer last year. He averaged 12 points per game overall, to all of a sudden being like, I think Io is going to average closer to what he did as a starter last year, even if he's coming off the bench, because of his three-point shooting looks legit. His ability to get off shots is better, things like that. So I think that, Io probably going to be around that same area, but it's going to be elite for him because he's going to do what he did as a starter last year. He averaged 16 points per game as a starter, and he may do that now coming off the bench and not as a starter. So he's going to have a really big role. Kobe, I don't think Kobe's going to go from 19 points per game to like 27, 28. He's probably going to go anywhere between 22 to 24, somewhere up in there, depending on things that happen. So if you're talking about just the numbers, right, and this is just the averages, not anything else, there are other things that play a part into it. I think that Julian Phillips could hit the largest leap of numbers from last year to numbers this year on the Chicago Bulls roster. If he stays healthy, he plays well, plays that defense. I think that Julian Phillips just has a great opportunity to really step up his game big time for the Chicago Bulls. I mean, look at it. He averaged 2.2 points per game. If Julian Phillips plays the way that we've seen him show glimpses of, and it's consistent, you can easily see Julian Phillips averaging 8 to 10 points per game coming off the bench for this Bulls team. And maybe even more. That could be undercutting him with how many shots this Bulls team is going to get up as well. So again, huge expectations on him, but it's still not the highest expectations, right? And I'm going to bear the lead. I can go here player by player, but what I'm going to lead to in this is that the aspect of this team that has the highest expectations on them is Billy Donovan. And I think Billy Donovan he should have the highest expectations because this is the deepest roster that Billy Donovan could possibly have ever had with the Chicago Bulls. Now, I think the 2021-22 team had its fair share of depth. That team could not stay healthy. We lost Alex Caruso for a large part. We lost Patrick Williams. And so we ended up not having that depth, right? And even then, we kind of didn't have the depth at the big man that even we do now, and it's still a thin position. But you got to look at it this way. This team, 1 through 5, is extremely deep. But then you can legitimately make cases for 5 guys being in the consistent rotation coming off the bench for this team. Lonzo. Now, again, his injury thing, it plays a part into it, but Lonzo, Ayo, Buzelis, Julian Phillips, Torrey Craig, Jalen Smith, THT. That's 7 guys that I just mentioned off this bench, right? That can legitimately make a case for being in the rotation consistently. And the balancing act that Billy Donovan has to do is one of the most important aspects of the Chicago Bulls team coming into this year. The way that Billy Donovan balances and uses this rotation, as well as putting guys in places where their strengths can be maximized, is one of the most important. I mean, make no mistake about it. I'm somebody who I think generally we overlook the importance of coaching. I think kind of as more casual basketball fans have come, they kind of have this mindset and thought that the players kind of just dictated all, that they're just out there playing off what their natural skill is. No, a coach, like I've talked about many times, the fact that the Bulls in the last 3 years have not moved consistently off the ball, that is on coaching. Is it on the players for not doing it in games? Yes, but it's on the coaching staff for not instilling in them the sense that, hey, if you don't move without the ball, you're not going to get minutes, right? You're not doing what we need you to do. And so the coaching job that Billy Donovan has to do this season in balancing a rotation on top of making sure that this team, when things get tough, don't default back to some of the bad tendencies that we've seen from some of these players. It's an important coaching job, as well as the fact that we don't shape up to be a great defensive team. But the way that we want to play offense, you need to at least be solid in some areas defensively to maximize on that. And then when you get in the half court, you want to be faster, you can still be fast. Again, run and gun and up-tempo are very different things. Up-tempo, you can run a half-court set up-tempo-wise. You just got to move without the ball and make those quick decisions, right? And he has the personnel now to do that. Having Josh Giddey as a point guard, whatever Josh Giddey lacks in scoring-wise, he more than makes up for in his ability to play make, right? And his ability to create open shots, using his ability to slash with also having players move without the ball and him having the court vision to get those guys the ball. Same with Lonzo. You're going to have Lonzo in some games, right? And we'll see what that shakes out to. But Lonzo, who looks great, again, you now have a better 1-2 punch at the point guard position than maybe he's ever had, as far as point guards that can actually run his system and run it well, right? Point guards that are going to be able to get players the ball. And then you still got that balancing act to do with Kobe, Zach, right? Who's going to 1A, 1B, whatever it is, right? Getting both these guys to buy into not playing as much isolation and playing within the team, growing as off-ball players, those type of things, especially for Kobe White. But then the balancing off that bench, right? The multitude of looks that the Bulls can throw at opposing teams. And this one thing that Billy Donovan has never really done well is the chess match of basketball. Now, he has Dan Craig and Wes Unseld Jr., and I hope that he's really trusting these guys who've been on championship programs before, right? But having the versatility that we have coming off that bench to be able to throw so many different looks. For example, right, one quick, easy look. If the teams that we're facing, if we're facing off against a team that has not done a good job at stopping the Bulls in transition, flipping Nikola Vucevic with Jalen Smith automatically could change. God, if you bring in Jalen Smith and Modest Buzelis or even Julian Phillips in at the 4 and the 5. Again, I'm not saying starting, but I'm saying when you notice that you're taking advantage of a mismatch, you bring those guys in at the 4 and the 5. You now have a team that is dynamic. It's still going to be able to take some open threes, not as many, right? But that is, hey, listen, those guys are slashing, those guys are cutting, those guys are moving, those guys are doing the pick and pops, right? That changes your offensive look a lot. If you need more half-court offense, bringing in Lonzo Ball for Josh Giddey, having Nikola Vucevic at the 4, maybe even moving Torrey Craig to the 5. You got a half-court set now that can actually run some half-court offense for you. And if things slow down, you're not trying to do as quick, but you can have that look, right? You want to bring in a defensive focus unit. You can bring in Io as the point guard. You can then bring in Torrey Craig as the 4. You can bring in Jalen Smith as your 5, or you can bring in a small ball 5 because we've seen Patrick Williams guard up pretty well. And then you have a defensive unit as well. THC's been solid defensively in preseason. Not so great defensively over his career, but if that maintains, you got that look. There's a lot of different looks that this Bulls team can have. It's up to coaching, though, to take advantage of it. And that's where my faith is probably the thinnest at, is Billy Donovan recognizing these things that he can do. And so while a lot of people are talking about the case of who's the rotation, who's going to be ahead of this guy, you got this guy ahead of this guy, listen, it's up to Billy Donovan to, get these guys to buy into the fact that, hey, you may not play these next couple of games because of this, this, and this, but we know that if we need you, depending on how the look goes, you can bring it in. And he's going to have to step on some egos. Now, that's if this team even has it, right? This is a team that's coming in as a team with low expectations. But overall, Billy Donovan got a coach this year. And that's the thing that kind of scares me a lot. Right now, he has the veteran assistants there, and hopefully that helps with that. But I think Billy Donovan, this is the year. And I don't know if the front office do it. I'm just saying personally for me, I don't expect Billy Donovan to be fired. I'm past that. It is what it is. I just think that this team is showing you they love Billy. They're going to stick with Billy, right? But I think that the job that Billy Donovan does coaching-wise could really take a team that has a lot of really good pieces and can make this a gumbo in a way, right? A stew in a way where everything works together. And it's up to Billy Donovan to get to cooking. And listen, I know that Winton's pumping his fist on this one. Shout out to my brother Winton. And it's not even necessarily to come against Billy Donovan or come at Billy Donovan, but it's simple. You have a deep team here. Now, this team may still struggle to win games, and if we just don't have the talent, that's cool. But you can still see the matchups, right? You can still take advantage of those matchups, and that's something that Billy Donovan has not done a whole hell of a lot at. And so that's what I'm looking for this team in this season. Billy Donovan has to take advantage of mismatches. He has to take advantage of the depth that he has on this team to create matchups for this team. You got it here, right? Yes, we're undersized. We're a guard-heavy team, but you still have versatile forwards that you can use. Patrick Williams can play either forward position. Torrey Craig can play either forward position. Monas Bucilis can play either forward position. Julian Phillips can play either forward position. Then you got Dalen Terry can play the 2 and the 3, right? You even got some of THC can play the 2 or the 3, right? So you got guys in here that can be versatile in positions. We already know Io can play 3 positions. Lonzo can guard 4 positions, right? Especially if that knee holds up. So you have versatility in what you can do and what you can look at. And so that's going to be the interesting case point in this one, right? And again, I did not go through all the different looks. That's up to Billy Donovan to show us that. But there are really a lot of different looks, and that's where a coach should get the most excited at. When you have the arsenal that the Bulls could potentially have, you got to look at coaching. And so Billy Donovan, to me, has some of the highest expectations on him. That does not take away from what the players need to do on the court. But Billy Donovan got to coach well this year, because it's all laid out for him. He has all the tools at his disposal to coach well. I won't say necessarily be successful, because we got to still see the scale and how the defense is going to shake out, how many close games is. And I'm not judging this Bulls team necessarily about wins and losses this year. It's about the growth and development as well as how people are used. And hopefully Billy Donovan is ready and prepared to do that. So we'll see what happens there. But long-winded way to say Billy Donovan has the highest expectations on this team for me, right? Because you got it now. We've questioned, we've asked, does Billy Donovan have the roster to run what he wants to run? You got it now. Even with us being thin at the center, because I think we're fine at power forward. I know people are like, I want a traditional 6'9", 6'10" power forward that bruises. And we don't have that, but we have power forwards that can play the modern game. And even at the center position, you got Jalen Smith, you got Nikola Vucevic, and Billy Donovan, I don't know if you know this or not, you have a 6'9", 245-pound center and a Adama Sanogo who's pretty goddamn tough, who can get some block shots, who can get some rebounds. And while the scoring may not be there for him to isolate and score individually, you got the guards also that can get him the ball. So if you do happen to run into a team or run into a situation where you need some added center depth, hey, Billy, Adama Sanogo is ready. He's there. Use him. Use him. That's what I'll say. Now, with that said, I want to get into this. Before we go, last topic. What is the goal for Lonzo Ball this season? Right? And I'm going to say this to me, and this may seem like I'm not going to get caught up. I've done it. I've been there. I've gotten caught up in the excitement after seeing Lonzo Ball and what he was able to do this preseason. And hey, listen, fans, You got the right to be excited. The boy looked good, right? But with that said, the simple thing that I have, the goal for Lonzo Ball for me this season isn't about averaging 5 3-pointers per game. It isn't about averaging 6 assists, 6 rebounds, 10 points per game. It's not about that. It's about this simple thing. And I think this is a great, because he's going to perform when he's on the court. That's why I'm not really worried about the numbers, because I think whatever Lonzo brings, he's going to make players better around him. And we see it. Shot's still there. He's going to perform when he's on the court. But the simple goal that I have for Lonzo Ball this season is play more games than you miss. And that's a fairly low bar, right? That's 42 games. You're playing more games than you miss in that case. Now, I think Lonzo is going to play, or I hope that he can play more than that. But I think that's a really simple goal. Again, and I'm taking that in the sense that I know what Lonzo can bring when he's on the court. But it's about Lonzo playing more games than he misses. If Lonzo plays more games than he misses this season for the Chicago Bulls, that is a great foundation on this Lonzo with his new knee in this new phase of his career, the latter phase of his career, and how this is going to shape out. I think that's a great thing, again. And this is coming from the place of, I'm not worried about what Lonzo's going to bring on the court, because it's going to be quality basketball, regardless of whatever the stats say. But if Lonzo can be on the court more than he's off of it, he can play more games than he misses this year for the Bulls, that's huge, considering that he's coming back from 2 surgeries that nobody has ever come back from. That is huge in that sense. And that's what he needs to do. And I think that is a great, again, before anybody gets to typing and tripping, it's not to say that Lonzo is not going to have numbers, that he's not going to put up some really good games stat-wise. It's just that that's a byproduct. Lonzo Ball being on the court is the most important thing for your team, because Lonzo does good things when he's on the court, right? And he's going to make players better around him. I think when you look at this, who does Lonzo Ball help most when he's on the court? The question really, the answer to that question really is everybody. But I think specifically Ayo, right? Because that's another point of attack defender that allows Ayo to become more of a scorer while he's still defending, but he doesn't have to do facilitating. Julian Phillips, a player that is right now has a lot of potential scoring-wise, but maybe he isn't the best isolation player. Having a player like that to come off the bench with you is huge. Modest Bucilis, the rookie, right? I'm really excited to see what Modest Bucilis and Lonzo Ball look like on their minutes on the court together, because I think Lonzo's going to put him in a position where it's going to be like, shoot, my boy, right? And I think Vooch as well. I think Vooch is another player that really benefits from Lonzo Ball being on the court, because Lonzo is such a good communicator in pick and roll situations where Vooch basically just plays drop defense. Lonzo's going to help with that. Lonzo's also going to feed the big man, him and Jalen Smith, in different ways, right? He's going to be able to get the lobs to Jalen. He's going to be able to get the ball in that pocket to Nikola Vucevic so Vooch can do his thing, right? And I think those are players that really benefit a lot. But let me be clear. Answer could be very well everybody. But I look at those players the most and who's going to benefit with Lonzo Ball being on the court. Lonzo, be on the court, stay on the court, play more games than you miss. And I think this is going to be a really big season for Lonzo to lay that foundation and remind the NBA, hey, listen, I'm still here and I'm still pretty damn productive, right? Regardless of whatever start, whatever, playing back-to-backs, whatever. When I'm on this court, though, you got to worry about me. Still, you're not about to sag off on me because I got a dead man's knee in my knee, right? So that's a really good thing, and I think that's a really good place to start off with. And then, depending on what the future holds for Lonzo Ball and a new contract with the Chicago Bulls, that's going to be really interesting to watch. I think that could be a developing story. I think the biggest story is going to be Josh Giddey's extension. Then, of course, what are the Bulls getting ready to do with Kobe and Ayo as they have to start preparing to extend them? But I think if Lonzo plays more games than he misses, and he brings the production that we know he can bring when he's on the court, even after this knee surgery, of course, that next thing is going to start up is, hey, the Bulls, what are you guys doing with this future of Lonzo Ball? What contract are you about to give Lonzo? Are you even about to offer him one, right? That could be a developing story as well for Lonzo, and I think that would be a great thing to develop, because Lonzo being off the court, shutting Stephen A. Smith up, those type of things, it's going to be a redemption tour for Lonzo Ball. But guys, let me know what you guys think on everything down below. Who do you think has the biggest expectations on him coming into this season? What do you think about Lonzo Ball? What is your bar? What is the most important thing for Lonzo Ball to do this season? What should that goal be for Lonzo? Let me know that down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.